Welcome everyone, it's Dave from Varnish Software and welcome to 2-Minute Tech Tuesdays. In this video we'll carry on the conversation on JSON Web Tokens or JWT. Apparently the recommended pronunciation is JOT, but I'm going to stick with JWT, JSON Web Tokens. Last week I introduced you to the concept, I showed you how a JWT is composed, how it is used, and what the role of Varnish is. More specifically, I showed you a VCL example how you can validate and verify JSON Web Tokens in Varnish. In this week's episode, we'll take it to the next level and we'll issue tokens ourselves in Varnish, which will turn Varnish into a full-blown authentication gateway. But I would recommend that you watch last week's episode and check out the basics, because that will help you understand what's going on. If you haven't, and if you have no intention to do so, let me give you a brief summary. JSON Web Tokens are authorization tokens that allow you to securely transport data between two parties. In fact, it's a collection of base64 encoded JSON objects where these objects represent the header, the payload, and the cryptographic signature. The payload is a collection of claims, and the signature guarantees the integrity of the payload. This is what a JSON Web Token looks like. So on the left-hand side, you have the token, and for your convenience, I color-coded the different aspects. If you take these parts that are separated by dots and you base64 decode them, you end up with the following JSON. Because JWT operates within an authorization context, if you want to get access to restricted content, you can use an authorization header, use the bearer keyword, and then put in the JSON Web Token, and that will get you access to the content. Here's the example from last week's video. This VCL is used to verify the validity of a JSON Web Token. The first thing we do is extract the token from the authorization header and parse it into the reader object. If that is valid, we go to the next step, assign the secret key, and mention what algorithm that is used to create that signature. If the signature matches, you can carry on. If not, an error is returned. So that's last week's video in a nutshell. This week, we're gonna kick it off and start issuing JSON Web Tokens. So I'm gonna put 2 minutes on the timer and explain you how to do that and how to leverage VCL to turn Varnish into a full-blown authentication gateway. Obtaining a JSON Web Token can be done by sending your username and your password to an authentication endpoint. If authentication is successful, you get the JSON Web Token. However, this is usually done by the origin, but you can offload this from the origin and do this in Varnish, and for that, you'll need some VCL. In this VCL example, we import a collection of VMODs. We'll need them for a variety of actions, and we'll initialize some of the object context in VCL init. We start off with a JSON Web Token reader object, the corresponding writer object, a key value store that will store authentication details in memory that will be loaded from etc varnish auth. These will be usernames and SHA-256 password hashes. We also initialize another key value store that will eventually contain all the secret keys of the JSON Web Tokens. If we want to issue JSON Web Tokens, we need to intercept the /auth endpoint and offload this from the origin server. When doing this, we want to extract the username and the password from the request body and store them in the corresponding headers. The username can be used to look up the password hash in the authentication key value store. If that doesn't match a SHA-256 hash of the password that we retrieved, then we have to return a 401 with an invalid username and password message. But if it was successful, then we can issue the JSON Web Token by returning a custom 700 synthetic response. This causes a transition to the VCL synth subroutine where we intercept the 700 status, reassign a 200 OK, and then call a custom create JWT subroutine. This will set the resp.http.jwt header that we'll use to extract the JSON Web Token and parse it into the response body. Of course, we need to dive a bit deeper and look at the create JWT subroutine. This is a custom one that will use the JWT writer context to set the algorithm and the type, which will be part of the header, and then a collection of claims. The subject is the username that we extracted. The issuer is the host header. The issued at is set to now, and the duration is set to 2 hours, which will set the not valid before and the expiration time. We also need the secret key, which will be randomly generated and stored into resp.http.key, and we'll use that key as a value into jwt-writer.generate to actually generate the full JWT. This will be stored in resp.http.jwt for later use, and these values are also stored in the keys key value store, which we'll use for validation later on. That was a very lengthy yet interesting and insanely powerful VCL example if you ask me, and I hope you appreciate what this can mean for your application, because it allows you to offload your entire authentication, JSON Web Token issuing and verification logic from the origin to the edge in Varnish, taking away stress from the origin application and being able to cache pages that otherwise wouldn't be cacheable. So thank you for watching. I'll be seeing you next week with more content presented to you in 2 minutes or less.